All right, it's great to see everyone again. It's Dustin from We Are One Team, coming to you from just outside Kansas City, Missouri. I'm joined with a good friend of mine, Myrna Nieves, coming from Tampa, Florida, as now people have changed the name to Tampa Bay or Tampa Brady. So, Myrna, go and tell a little bit about yourself.
So I am currently an instructional coach for a K-8 charter school. I've actually been with the company for about 8 years. I originally started as a second grade teacher. I taught for 3 years, second grade, then I looped with my students to third grade. And after that, I was given the opportunity to step outside the classroom and become an instructional coach. So now I've been doing that for a few years.
Absolutely. So, what made you want to take that jump to go from the classroom to instructional coaching?
I think because there were so many teachers that what you learn at school is not the same thing when you're stepping into the classroom. So I fortunately had success my years of teaching with students. I'm not going to say it was great, but I actually had about a week to 2 weeks to observe a teacher fully and see how she managed kids. That classroom, it was invaluable time for me. And I think that really helped me bring into the classroom that I never really struggled with classroom management. It was always about building relationship with the kids, even, when they were that little, second grade. So, and then the other thing was the fact that I was able to loop with my students. The reason I was asked to loop is because of the success I had with the students. So I felt that I wanted to share my success with other teachers.
Absolutely. So, for those that are unfamiliar what an instructional coach does, how would you define your role?
So basically, it has a lot to do with planning and co-teaching. When I originally go into the classroom, I let teachers know that I am not there to judge them. I'm not there to do formal observations. I am their peer. I am still a teacher first and foremost. My title might be instructional coach, but I am a teacher. So I am there to literally observe and see how we can improve, or even me take back whatever I'm seeing from them to another classroom, because it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going into a classroom to give feedback. I could actually take some of those amazing teachers that I see and have them be teacher leaders to other teachers that are struggling. So basically for me, the way it works is I have scheduled days where I meet with teachers for planning meetings, and we basically discuss what standards are going to be, what standards are coming up, how can we teach them, what resources are we using, try to figure out ways to put those into the lesson plan that they want us to put them in. And from there, then I go to doing actual observations of them implementing what has been put into the lesson plans.
Absolutely. And that's a great approach to go into, because, as you know, a lot of teachers are pretty territorial. When someone comes in, they're worried that, oh, I hope, she doesn't see that. Maybe I struggle with this, or I'm really good with that. So it's great that you go in as, a colleague, hey, I'm just here to watch and take a few things and see what we can do to, already make your classroom even better than it was before. So whenever you go into a classroom, you're going to look at this particular lesson or whatever. What are your look-fors?
Honestly, I don't look at the teacher. I actually look at the students. I approach students. It's not like I go into the classroom and I stand in a corner and I'm looking to see if the agenda board is matching, or I'm looking to see if what's written on the lesson plan is what's being taught. Because as we know, things could change on a minute by minute. I could have said, this is what I'm going to teach. And then I realized that yesterday my lesson did not go well. And just because I didn't have the time to update it on my lesson plan does not mean that I'm not doing what I had planned to do. So rather than going and looking at the teacher and judging the teacher, I actually approach the kids. I like to ask the kids, what are you learning? What did you do? What do you remember? I get kids are honest. And they are not, they're not there to lie to you. And because they know that you're constantly going into the classroom, they're also going to feel at ease to give you that answer. So again, if I notice that there's a student that doesn't know what's going on, I I use that to then have conversations with the teachers, because after I do a walkthrough and observation, I always start my meetings with the teachers as, what do you think went well? What do you think didn't go well? So I use the feedback that the students have given me to help them also reflect on the way their lesson's going.
Absolutely, and that's a great way just to see, what the students are doing, and because, like you said, they're going to be honest with you. They're going to tell you, if they understand this or they don't. So that's a great way to go about it. So when you are observing these students, how can you tell that they aren't understanding it or they're not engaged?
Well, engagement, it's really easy to see. If we see them that they're just lying down on their desk or fiddling with something in their hands or things, that automatically lets me know on engagement. But if they tell me they don't understand what's going on in that particular lesson, I do go back to background knowledge. So I try to find something that they could relate to or connect to the current lesson, because regardless of whatever new content you give, there's always some type of background knowledge that you can tie to that new content. So I always try to use that to help me really understand why the child is not, are they truly lost? And then fortunately, I've been at the school long enough to know which one are our high flyers and which ones are our students that need that additional time to process information. So that also helps to know if my student that really doesn't get information, really struggles with that independent work. Is it really the delivery of the content, or is it that they're truly not getting the lesson at all? So I don't just make a quick judgment based on that first question or second question I ask.
Absolutely, and that's great to get that feedback and just kind of see where the students are at. So I'm going to go on the other end. You go into a classroom and the teacher's just hitting a home run with it. The kids are engaged, they're enjoying it. What kind of things are you seeing when a lesson is going great? What are you hearing? What are you seeing? What's it like in one of these classrooms?
In those classrooms, that's more a student-led classroom where the teacher's a facilitator. You hardly see the teacher doing any talking. Really, that classroom is student-led. She or he is basically there just monitoring, making sure that the students are doing and taking things above and beyond. I also see that when there's groups together, how the groups are engaging. Are they all on the same task, or are they on different tasks? The conversations that the students are having. So again, when I see what I consider superstar teachers, are those teachers that have now managed to facilitate in their classroom.
Absolutely. And where do you see teachers as facilitators going? Do you think we're seeing more facilitating of learning? Or are we seeing more teacher-driven instruction?
I honestly see a lot of teacher-driven instruction, especially in our older teachers, because that's just the way they learn. It's really hard. It's really hard as a teacher to let go, because we're just afraid of what's going to happen when you release. But I think that's the main thing, is teachers being able to release. And I think that this current situation where they have no control in this remote learning is going to help them, whenever we are able to go back into the classroom, realize that you could let go. Because right now we have no control. We really have no control about what children are going through in their homes, how they're absorbing the information, how they're getting that back to us. So a lot of it does fall back on the kids. And I think that this pandemic that we're going through is going to be able to allow more teachers to now be those facilitators.
Absolutely. And I see, you had no choice but to adapt. We're seeing teachers who weren't the most technologically savvy having to go head first into using technologies. They're using a lot more different tools, programs, and we're really seeing the social emotional needs really coming to the forefront, which is the foundation of it. If we're not addressing those SEL needs, learning's not going to be able to take place at the most
No.
effective way. So I think we're seeing that. And like you, I'm optimistic that we're going to see more teacher facilitating, just because our kids are going to have to work in teams. They're going to have to collaborate. They're going to have to problem solve. And so if we can model that in the classroom, that's only going to benefit them as they get older.
Correct. I agree.
Absolutely. So with being an instructional coach, you're going into a teacher's classroom. You have to have some sort of relationship or build a relationship, which is extremely important just to get that trust from a teacher. How are you able to build that relationship?
I always try to, it's not just asking them, how are you? It's going beyond how are you and remembering every time I see them something about them. So whether when they're coming in the morning, I see them with a Starbucks cup of coffee. So then when we get together to have a meeting, I'm like, oh, so I noticed that you like Starbucks. What kind of flavor is Starbucks? What do you drink? So it's just, being observant to the little things. And that's how I've managed to build those relationships, is just being observant to how they, to the things that they like or the little things they've mentioned. And another thing that I do is at the end of our meetings, I always make sure to send out a survey so they can give me feedback on how it went. Because again, I might be the instructional coach, but it doesn't mean I have all the answers. I also need to grow. And I'm only going to grow if they are able to provide me feedback. So I ask them, how do they think that our meetings went? So I like to give them that open door, that voice and choice. And I think that is what has really helped to build that relationship. Another thing is I don't come in as a dictator. This is, I try for them to understand that we're a team regardless. My title is just a title. And that's the one main thing I try to emphasize to them. It is just the title. Because guess what? If we have no subs and you can't be there that day, I will be the one going into the classroom and teaching your students. So that's just the way it works. So I want them to know that I am in the trenches with them. And when I do that, and then I also say to them, is there anything I can do? I try to make sure that when I say, is there anything I can do? I don't just say it from my mouth out. I really want them to know, if there's anything I can do, tell me. I will roll up my sleeves and go in there with you. You need for me to call parents? Do you need help with your lesson plans? Do you need help teaching this lesson? You're understanding it, but you're not sure how to deliver it, whatever that may be. So I think that them seeing me in that light is what has helped to build the trust.
And absolutely. And just them, and like you said, even though you have that title as instructional coach, you're still a teacher as well, and that you're there for them to work together and help. That makes a tremendous amount of difference. You mentioned how you hand out surveys, and with the years that you've done this, I'm sure you've gotten surveys where maybe you wish you could have done better. Okay. What are ways you've grown from having some of that upfront feedback?
The ways I've grown is I've really reflected on how it is that I approach teachers. The very first time, my very first year when I was a coach, I went in a way where again, I went in as a dictator. This is what you have to do. These are the resources we have to use. This is the standard. And I got a lot of pushback from teachers. My principal at the time said, well, Myrna, do you possibly think the reason you're struggling with these teachers is because this was a new school. So I opened up a new school, and I was the only one that was with the corporation. So even though I've been with the company for a while, I have moved into a couple of sister schools, and I was somebody with the company. So she said to me, she goes, just because you're in this role, there's no buy-in from these teachers. To these teachers, you're just like, okay, this is your title. Why should I believe what you're telling me? Why should I listen to what you're telling me? So she's the one who told me, you really need to get some feedback from them. You really need to see how they feel about you. And she goes, and it might be tough. Some of the things you hear are going to be tough. And then she actually told me, she goes, and I'm going to be honest with you, teachers have come to me and they have complained about you. And that was hard. That was a hard pill to swallow. And I can't say I was happy with it the first day or the second day, but all I know is that year 2, I totally shifted my approach with teachers, and it really changed things. So it's going back to your question. It's just a lot about reflecting, really being reflective and not taking things personal. If you're putting yourself out there and you're asking people to tell you, then you have to be reflective enough to say, you know what, they're seeing me with a different set of eyes, and I need to get myself into their shoes.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that you were just vulnerable, mentioning that, it's tough to receive feedback, especially, you want the feedback to be good because you want to be told you're doing a great job, and having teachers come back and say, we don't know, that can be tough. And so, you can really tell the people who take that and are able to grow from it. And the most important thing is to really don't take it personal. They probably loved you as a person and thought you were great to be around, but maybe some of those methods, were kind of a bit of a turnoff. And so the fact that, you weren't able to take it, that you didn't take it personal probably really helped you grow from it.
Exactly, it did.
Exactly. So when you're working with the teacher, you have observed their class, you've observed their lesson, and you want to make some suggestions. And that teacher is a little hesitant. And that's okay. Some teachers, want to have some sort of data or have more trials of observations for whatever reason. But you make some suggestions. How do you get that teacher to buy in?
The buy-in doesn't come until after the data. So I'm glad that you actually mentioned data. I suggest what I think should be done, and it's really up to them to do it or not. If they choose not to do it, it's okay. Then we go into, when at our next meeting, I said, so give me a little bit feedback on your formative assessment. How was your formative assessment doing things this way? And believe it or not, just by asking them those questions, they are able to come back and say, well, it didn't really go so well. It didn't go as expected. And that's when I come back and I say, well, did you try my suggestion? And many times it's fear. It's not that they don't want to do it. It's they're afraid of how to do it because they only know how to do things one way. So I could think that I'm delivering my message to them in the most clear-cut way. But in my head, I know how it could look. In their head, they're not walking in my shoes, so they have really no idea how it looks. So that then opens the door to allow me to come in and co-teach with them. So basically, after that, I say, okay, when you're going to try this lesson again, how do you feel about me coming in and then you starting, me jumping in? And that's how I'm able to, once again, now get that buy-in from them. But I never go at them if they don't want to take my suggestion without having some data.
Absolutely. And you mentioned how fear is a word, we're not just with education, but just all of life in general. A lot of people have that fear of change, fear of taking that step. So again, you may see it in the construction field or the business field. You see it in the education field. Naturally people are going to be comfortable with familiarity, and that change is something that is, it's scary. It was scary for me. I was terrified of change for a very long time, and then I had to make some adjustments, lifestyle wise to, get to where I needed to be. So how have you used fear or change to your advantage?
You know what? I just don't even think about it and do it. I honestly, and I think I'm not a person to really be afraid, but I have to say when we started this remote learning thing, we were still testing the waters with the Zoom. So for 2 weeks, our students had packets because not only am I an instructional coach, but I also stepped in, and I don't think I shared this, I stepped in to teach 7th grade civics in January. So I'm now also teaching. So I told the kids, I said, we're going to do a trial Zoom to see how the features work and make sure that everything's going well. I was afraid. I was afraid of myself in the camera. I was afraid how I was going to come across. I'm also a person that in the classroom, if I start talking and the kids start talking while I'm talking, I tend to forget what I'm saying. So I was also fearful of the fact that I'm going to be on camera. This is going to be recorded. My admin is going to see this. I'm going to look like a fool. There's probably parents back there. But I said, you know what? Whatever. I'm just going to do it. And it was awful. I went on. I was trying to talk. I had like 60 students talking over me. I was trying to figure out how to mute them. They kept on unmuting themselves. I didn't know that there's that option for them not to be able to unmute themselves. So when you ask me, how do I overcome fear? You know what? I just don't think about it. I just do it. Because I think that the more I think about it, I'm just never going to do it. So.
Absolutely. You know, I've told my students a story how I didn't learn to swim until I was probably 10 years old. And so I remember, you know, at the end of summer baseball, we went to the pool and kind of had an end of the team celebration. And so there's a lot of peer pressure to jump off the high dive. Well, I was always very hesitant to do that because I always thought I was going to drown. So one day or at some point at that night, I just went up there, I just walked across and I just went, you know, I didn't even look down and, you know, and I didn't look back ever since. So like you said, a lot of times you just have to stick your head in and do it.
But yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
And
So
now I take it, you didn't drown. You
no,
didn't drown because you're here.
I,
So
I'm right here. You know, they told me, you know, whenever I would jump, I would go in the water and then it would shoot me back up. And that's exactly what happened. So, you know, it all worked out. So you mentioned how you build that relationship with teachers. Having that relationship with administration is both similar and it's different as well. How would you describe the dynamic of a relationship between an instructional coach and administration?
wow, that one's a little harder because administration has they have a different set of people that they need to please. Um, they have parents, and like I said, I work for a charter school, so they have a board. They have higher ups that they need to respond to. They have the state, so that letter grade is a big thing. Whereas for me, my main concern is teachers. It's not that I don't care about everything else, but again, if I don't have that relationship with teachers, there's not going to be any buy-in. We're not going to be able to work together. We're not going to be able to move forward. So it's very different. And there has been some clashes as far as the views, because my admin will say, well, this needs to be done. And then I will say, well, that's not going to work for that teacher. Those resources are not going to be the best. Or this teacher cannot, what you're expecting them to do, that's just, they're not going to be able to, at least not now. So that one's a little tricky. It's harder.
Absolutely. And you mentioned how even it's a little bit different with a charter school because they have to answer to a board and other people as well. So like I said, there are some similarities, but there obviously are a lot of differences as well. And I was just curious on how that dynamic is between admin and instructional coach and instructional coach and teachers. So again, a lot of good points that a lot of people don't know about, especially with a charter school. So with instructional coaching, you are presenting, you know, different strategies, engagement, that sort of things. What are some newer or innovations that teachers can use for engagement?
Actually, everything that they're doing now is what I would have loved for them to do before, but it's okay. So like the Flipgrid that's going on, the seesaw, all these different things that have been around, Nearpod, they've been around for a long time. I personally have used them in the classroom. And like I said, when I stepped into civics, I introduced the students to all these different tools that when we went remote, it was a smooth transition for the students I taught, but it wasn't as smooth for the other students because they had never used it. So that's really what I think it is having all this technology and knowing that all this was out there, but because I don't want to say set in our ways. Some teachers might have been set in their ways. Other people, like I said, could have been afraid to use the new things. Others, it's, oh my gosh, we got to teach to this test. And I really can't spend too much time trying to teach kids to do this, because then I'm going to fall back on my curriculum. This time that we're home has now allowed us to do so many different things. So the innovation is actually happening right now. It truly is.
Absolutely. And like you said, there's so many teachers that have taken that head dive into trying new things and, really brushed up on new innovations and sort of things. So when we do return, and we are going to return to our brick and mortar settings, how do you envision your role maybe evolving, or how do you think you'll be utilized once we return? Are you going to present maybe more SEL strategies or more grouping sort of teachings? How do you think your role may change when we return?
I honestly see my role not just being an instructional coach. I honestly see it being a little bit of instructional coach and classroom teacher. Only because I'm glad you mentioned the SEL. That has been one big struggle for many to see. I mean, it's sad, but we have come across many zeros in the grade book. And it's like, did we reach these kids? Did we see why there's a zero in there? Oh yeah, I emailed and nobody was replying, and it's been 2 weeks. So, that breaks my heart, because it's like, did you reach out? Did we try to see why it is that we have not reached this child? Why is it that we have not heard from them? So it's really that social emotional side that some teachers have not been able to connect. So I could see some teachers deliver amazing lessons and they do great, but then they don't have that connection with students. And that's a big gap. That is a huge gap.
Absolutely.
So that's why I'm saying I see my role as half instructional coach, but also half teaching, because for me, when I was in the classroom, my biggest thing were the kids. My relationship with the kids is the biggest thing.
Absolutely. And we talk about SEL so much. It didn't just start whenever we went to distance learning. That starts August or September, whenever our school starts. That starts day one. Yeah. And guess what? You do it every single day. Yeah. So even those students that may be hard to reach, I have some students who have had trouble getting stuff done, but I'm able to have contact with them because of those relationships that were developed throughout the year. I'm able to work with their parents and have that patience, that grace, and just that empathy, because, a lot of our students are going through, difficult things. I have a couple students whose parents have lost jobs, or they have to watch kids throughout the day. So we really don't know what our students are going through without those relationships.
Correct. And Absolutely. It's hard. If you don't have those relationships, the students will not open up about it. Once you have that relationship enough, they feel comfortable to share that personal side, because many, I don't know about you, but I know that I've been in some Zoom sessions where the kids will not show their face. Mm-hmm. And it's okay. I don't mind if I can. And probably the reason they're not showing it is because they don't want to show us their surroundings, what that camera behind them is going to show.
Sure.
So it's not that they're being defined to what we're asking them to do. It could just be that their home life or home situation, or where they happen to be sitting with that laptop at the moment, is not something they want others to see.
Absolutely. And you make a very, very good point. Just the fact that, kids are aware, they may be in a tough situation. They don't want other people to see that. So again, a great point. So as you know, I teach special education and I love doing it. With instructional coaching, we have our very high achieving students. We have kind of our middle grounds, and then we have, usually our special education students who may need more assistance. So how do you help teachers reach those high achieving students and then those lower achieving students?
With the high achieving students, what I've noticed, at least the ones that I've worked with, they do not have a problem with working independent. They're those kind of kids that you can just present to them a task and they will run with it. They're not so much as wanting your attention constantly. They're very driven to work with their group or on their own. That's what I've noticed. So as long as the work that's given to them is challenging, but they also know that they can come to you with any questions, I've seen that has been a success, which then allows me to work with the special ed students, the ones that are lower, because then I can have a lot of that one-on-one. Even though they're working in a small group, they still like to have a teacher there with them to guide them, to answer their questions. So that's the way that's the way I'm able to reach both. Like those high achievers are pretty much very independent. They don't really want you hovering over them constantly, asking them, are you okay? Are you doing fine? Do you need my help? They're okay with them. The other ones, on the other hand, they actually love your attention. They crave for that. They don't want to tell you that they need help, but unconsciously, by them wanting you there, lets you know that they want your help.
Absolutely. And again, it goes back to those relationships. When you have those relationships, you got them. You can reach them. They'll tell you things. They'll be, our students are honest. They're not going to beat around the bush. They'll tell you if they understand something, or if they don't. So again, it's all relationships. So for someone who is wanting to pursue instructional coaching, what are probably 3 to 5 things that they need to know in order to be successful?
Be reflective. Be reflective. That would be 1. Honest. Always be honest. I'm not saying not to tell your little white lies, but it's okay to let a teacher know, listen, I saw this and it didn't go well. It's okay. It's just how you tell them. So definitely reflective, be honest, be present. Be present. So when I say roll up your sleeves and get in there with them, it's just being present, letting them know that you are their partner. You are not a dictator to tell them what to do. And just continue building relationships. I know that I have built relationships with teachers, then it kind of went on a downhill. And actually, this is the school year. We started off great. It went on a downhill because the team itself was not getting along, and it turned to be a divided team. But once we went into this remote learning, before we even went into touching anything curriculum, I wanted to start on a clear plate with them. And I just said, guys, we just started talking about some personal things. We started laughing. And at the end of that meeting, I said to them, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to once again partner up with you, because everything was not perfect. Like I said, even though this is not my first or second year doing this, we started off great, but we hit a bumpy road, and it took to get into this situation for me to say, you know what, thank you for once again allowing us to build on the relationship that we had originally started. So yes, so being reflective, being honest, being present, and just continue to build those relationships. Don't think that they're guaranteed. Don't think that because you've built this relationship, it's like a flower. If you don't keep on watering it, it's going to die on you. So always just add a little bit to continue doing it.
Absolutely. Like you said, that's a great analogy. Our relationships are like plants. They need that water and sunlight, and, and then they can remain strong. And I love the fact how you're reflective. You guys did hit a bit of a rough patch, and I kind of took this to kind of get back together on the same page. So I can tell you're a very reflective person. So as your career in education has evolved, how have you grown both as a professional and as a person?
As a person, I have honestly appreciated all those around me. Before I'm not going to say I was self-centered, but I just looked at the few people that I dealt with. I didn't look at a lot of things, and I was quick to judge. I'm no longer that person. I am now the person that, even in a negative situation, there's a reason why this happened. There's got to be a reason why. There's got to be a light. There's got to be a positive to why that happened. So that is how personally I've grown from it. Professionally, I have to say, throughout the years, I've now appreciated working with older kids. That was my biggest fear. I went in working, I actually originally started working with 4-year-olds. Then I went into 5, first grade, second grade, third grade. I now work with middle schoolers, and I totally see myself moving on into the high school level, because those are the kids that are forgotten. Everybody likes the cute little ones, but you forget about those older ones, that if they don't have somebody there to push them, believe in them, they could easily go down the wrong path. And that's where my heart really is right now with many of our students. Fortunately, because we're a charter school, we're a smaller family, so we're able to make connections with kids and really hone in on a lot of small or kids that have a lot of issues. And we try to tell them, listen, next year you're going off to high school, or in 2 years you're going to be off in high school. And I want to make sure that they find somebody that cares for them as much as we do, because these are the kids that they could easily go down the wrong path. So professionally, for me, it's been appreciating also the older kids. Yes, they're not cute, but they're fun. They're really fun.
They really are a lot of fun. And I tell my kids as well, listen, you're around us more than you are your entire family. And so when they get to be
Yeah.
that age, especially high school, they're developing their own personality. They're developing independence, and I'm helping them teach that and those self-advocacy skills to voice out what they need and what they want. And so when they're able to do that, you can really meet them, where they're at. And like you said, they need to have that strong relationship, because hormones are kicking in. They're hanging out with friends. They're doing activities. They're spending most of their day with us. And so a lot of times their parents are getting, them at the end of the day. So they're seeing a different version of them. So they need to have that strong person or persons at the school setting. So like, high school is a lot of fun. Do they present challenges? Oh yeah. Sometimes they think they know it all and they got it all figured out, but no, it's very rewarding.
Good. I'm excited about that. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I am excited to, go in that role.
Right. Absolutely. All right. Last question. If you look right behind me, it says "We are one team." Now, that's what I'm all about. That's what I created. So when you see "We are one team," what does that mean to you?
I see it as one team. Collaboration. I honestly see it as we may not all like each other. We may not all agree on the same things, but we all have the same goal in mind, which is success for students, build our network as teachers, and learn from each other. So to me, that's what I see a team. I honestly see us as a team that we may not always agree, and that's okay. But we are going to agree that the end goal is going to be the same. And that's a team, because you know what? If you're the strongest person on your team, then your team's not strong. It's just not. In order for you to have a strong team, you need to have a strong team. It's like everybody has something to give.
Absolutely. When you have a team, are you all going to go out for dinner after every night? No, but you're all working towards the same goal. If it's a sports team, your goal is to win a championship, if you think of it like that. So I bring a unique skill set, you bring a unique skill set, everyone has their own skills. And so it's up to us to work together, teachers, administration, our support staff, our parents, everyone needs to be pulling on that same rope, to better put our students in a position to succeed. So that's really what We Are One Team is.
Correct.
Yeah. All right. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I've learned so much about instructional coaching and getting to know you on social media and interacting. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much for coming on. And we will definitely do this again. All right.
Definitely. Thank you, Dustin, for reaching out. This
Yeah.
was really, really nice. I loved it.
Thank you. Thank you.